Hi. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Simran and I'm with CANOPY. CANOPY is a co-working space that's based in San Francisco. I'll add our website in the chat box below. You can go ahead and look at our website and book a tour if you're interested in coming by to see who we are. Today's conversation is one of my favorite series that you've had this year. It's the last of a 4-part series on how to build your dream team, to build your dream house. And in this episode, we're talking about the ultimate dream team. We will open this up to Q&A at the end of the talk. So go ahead, you can write your questions in the chat box, or you can also digitally raise your hand and I'll call on you when we open it up to the Q&A session. And now I'm going to hand it over to our panel moderator. This is our second time doing it. So Meghna Krishna Bondili of Butterfly Voyage, all you.
Wonderful. Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you Simran for introducing us, and thank you CANOPY for hosting. I'm so excited to be here today, and Simran and I were chatting prior to this, and it turns out that we have some repeat visitors. So thank you to our audience who's coming back again, and we hope that you find this insightful and valuable. So without further ado, I am very excited to introduce our panelists for the 4th and final session on this series about realizing your dreams to build your dream home. I think in this day and age when there is so much going on in the world, our homes become a place of sanctuary, and thinking about how the place that we have all probably spent more time than we ever thought we would have before has actually evolved, and what the evolution of our next home is truly feels like a luxury. And I'm very excited to have this discussion today. It's definitely a treat this afternoon. So introducing our panelists, I'd love to first introduce a repeat panelist, Gregory Cook of Cook Construction. Greg Cook founded Cook Construction in 2007, so he's been through quite a few market cycles. And as an ambitious builder and also the son of a carpenter, Cook has always had a deep understanding of his work ethic and the execution of detail needed to execute and deliver high caliber construction results. It's this idea of you have the dream, but then you actually have to build the dream to make it real. So Cook Construction's commitment to a collaborative approach has fostered their reputation as a well-respected project management firm in addition to construction. Some of his projects include a beautiful historic estate in the North Bay's Ross, and probably my favorite, a 7,000 square foot stunning contemporary residence just beneath Sutro Tower. Our second panelist today that I'd love to introduce is Regan Baker of Regan Baker Design. And with 17 years of experience, Regan leads Regan Baker Design, the design practice that focuses on interior architecture and interior design. Regan firmly believes that design should be comfortable, modern, and personal, and she strives to bring those aspects to every project that she works on. As a fashion-forward and design-savvy mom, which I very much respect as someone that I feel is both, she knows that personal style and lifestyle function are equally important features in a home, and believes in creating spaces that are an extension of who you are as a person and who you are and could be as a family. Our next panelist, Stephen Stept of Feldman Architecture. Stephen is an owner and managing partner of Feldman Architecture. Recognized for their residential projects, the work of the firm employs a minimal yet rich palette of materials to provide the most tranquil background against which life has lived, particularly in Northern California. When you think about California modernism, indoor-outdoor living, which is more important than ever now, open planning, and actually choosing the best spot on a piece of land to build your home, how does that live harmoniously with the surrounding landscape? So in addition to custom single-family homes, Feldman Architecture's work encompasses a broad spectrum of building types, including multifamily residential developments, modular, sustainable, prefabricated homes, commercial interiors, and also institutional projects. Our next panelist is Joseph Lucier of Sotheby's International Real Estate. Joseph has earned a respected and very well-established reputation in San Francisco's luxury residential market, originally joining Sotheby's International Realty in 1999. Again, another industry veteran with many market cycles under his belt. As a native San Franciscan, something you don't hear a lot these days, Joseph's love of the city's history, beauty, and architecture inspires the work that he does every day, and he is highly regarded for representing San Francisco's most beautiful and finest luxury properties. Joseph's core belief in the development and the integration of quality relationships is a brand hallmark and consistently accounts for the high-touch experience his clientele and also really important, his professional partners enjoy. A little bit about me really quickly. I forgot to introduce myself. I'm Meghna Krishna Bondili. You can call me Meg. And as Simran mentioned, we will be answering questions after the discussion. So please feel free to put things in the chat. My experience tends to be more on the development side, originally starting in New York and then moving to San Francisco where I live now. So my goal is always to think about how do we foster discussions to build better places for all people and share these ideas. So without further ado, I'd love to dive into the discussion and first think about how do teams work together? What makes the best collaboration? And every panelist has such deep experience and thinks about how teams can be structured probably in a very similar way, as you'll learn. So it's this discovery approach. And first I'll turn to Greg and say that construction sometimes has this perception of the least glamorous side of building a home, but without the actual nuts and bolts and how do we put this all together, those vision and execution just remain dreams. So for Greg, I'll start with saying, how does a design vision connect to the actual craft required to construct a dream home?
Man, that's a tough one. I think that it really starts with just well, we do a lot of residential remodels. So we're kind of working off of a pre-created palette of a home, and then we often do a lot of initial walkthroughs with clients. I have a walkthrough this weekend with a potential home buyer, just looking to see kind of how they can expand upon what is there. A lot of these 1950s homes need some significant remodel work, and then getting an understanding of what that home is, and then kind of being able to suggest people that I think kind of can help build upon what's already there. A lot of the times we're making substantial additions and out like going up on floors and so on and so forth. But I think that really getting an understanding of what the homeowner is looking for in the home is a great start to a good project.
I love that because homes begin with people. Ultimately, people are the ones that use the property and think about what their family and friends and their community will enjoy in that home. And in that note, I'll turn it over to thinking about the agent and the broker side of of finding your home. So Joseph, thinking about the human experience of acquiring a new home or thinking about remodeling an existing home, what are some of the insights that you can share about how clients think about approaching their design vision when they first see a space?
That's a good question. I found that as much pre-planning as you can do with your client and articulating exactly what they want out of a house and their requirements, oftentimes I tell my clients, you'll know your house when you walk in the front door. And that experience, I have watched that experience happen hundreds of times, and it's true. You wake up in the morning and the next thing you know, you walk through a house that afternoon and you can't imagine how you ever lived without this house in your life. And that inspiration is the first spark that very often drives the whole process, is that your imagination starts percolating and the desire follows behind that. And then, you get into the conversations, if you're lucky enough to have a good design build team, on how to kind of build that dream around that initial feeling.
I have a fun question for you, which I just thought about as you were talking. How do you recognize your dream location for a house if the house is not perfect?
I'm sorry,
How do you recognize that this is a dream location for a house if the structure itself is not perfect, but that one day you want to put something there?
Well, listen, San Francisco real estate, particularly good real estate, is in limited supply. We're surrounded by water on three sides. The other parts of the city are Golden Gate Park and, the southern part that's actually getting developed now. We tell buyers that the 80% rule is what you should follow. If a house has 80% of what you want, it is definitely in your strike zone in San Francisco. You're never going to get 100 at any price. And location is such an important part for purchasing in San Francisco, given the topography and the views and the weather climate, that if you find that location and the house isn't exactly what you had envisioned, oftentimes the location can be the deciding factor for pulling the trigger.
That's great, thank you. And now that we think about this 80% rule and, whether that's your dream house or your dream location to build a house, now I'd love to turn the conversation over to Stephen. And Feldman Architecture, how do you recognize how to build upon that architectural vision from the buyer, from the human side? And then how do you take that vision of human beings and bring it alongside the precise science and the foundational technical aspects that are required to architecturally bring that home to life?
Well, there's so many factors involved here. I mean, just touching upon about what's the vision, what's the human aspect there. I mean, clients come to us with all sorts of different ways to describe what it is they're trying to achieve. And it depends, Meg, honestly, about whether we're talking about remodeling a house or finding a piece of land. So there's a lot of factors here, right? But really, for us, it really first starts with listening to people and just really trying to take in all the information. The site's going to tell us a lot about what is going to be prescribed. The building itself sometimes speaks to us in terms of what it needs or what it wants. And we have clients of all different levels of preparation. As we were just talking about a second ago. Some may come to us with a manuscript that they've been collecting for many years. Some may come with a Pinterest board. Some may come with just a wish list on a napkin. And it's just just thinking about the situations is all unique, and just diving in and just being open-minded and seeing kind of how things kind of evolve.
That's great. And just, building upon that, how do you manage setting the technical expectations on the client side? And I say that because we're all in the industry, so we sometimes use jargon that is not easy. Well,
there's a lot of factors there. I mean, technically wise, certainly we want to bring in other partners. We want to bring in, a contractor to kind of help analyze situations. If we're getting into a model that we might think that we have some vision to do something to it, or the client has some vision to do it, what are the opportunities? What are the constraints? We really live for the constraints. We love the constraints in terms of trying to find the opportunities to solve a problem. So, bring in other professionals, for things that, they will actually be able to bring to the table that we may not be able to know all the answers to.
That's great. Thank you. And I think this provides a very, perfect introduction to Reagan, because design is sometimes seen, especially on the interior side, as something that happens later in the process. But in actuality, having an interior architect and design firm actually helps you make smart guided decisions early on, so that you don't have to spend more time or have increased expenses to move a wall that you probably could have known about early on. So what I'd love to touch upon with you, Reagan, is when it comes to the interior design, it's not necessarily intuitive when is the right moment to bring your team in. And I'd love to hear from your perspective, timing, and then also practice when you work with different types of collaborators.
Yeah, I think the best is really the very beginning. And I know, I don't think we probably are assessing land, but, we're actually working on a project down in Laguna Beach, and we're going on site just to understand, it's going to be a new build, but we're going on site just to understand what the actual feel and flow of the house is. So we're wanting more of a tree house feel. So I think where designers come in is that overall feel on the interiors portion. So making sure we're, getting the client's feedback on their mood and what they're wanting the overall entire feel of the house to feel like. But I think, bringing us on at the very beginning, I think allows us to also bring set expectations also on like overlap, because I think a lot of the times clients don't like to pay for overlap, but we're honing on the items that specifically architects and interior designers are passionate about and are able to explain to the client that it's really important that these two pieces are collaborated on to make this a very successful project. But yeah, I think overall bringing us in on the earlier aspects of the project allows for more successful projects. And then I forgot what you had said. The second question was.
Absolutely, it was a long question. So the second is more on the collaborative side. How does an interior design practice best collaborate with all of the teams in building a dream home?
Just, I think the best thing is over communicating. I think Justin, sorry guys, working from the office. So yeah, the best I think is literally over communicating. So making sure, we have, systems set up in place. These days there's a lot of technology, such as Basecamp, Quip, that allow everybody to kind of save project files to understand communications, and making sure that we are able to basically have good record keeping so that we know exactly kind of where we're at in the process. But I think over communicating is huge. I think setting a good cadence for design meetings to allow enough time to review with our collaborators, also attending site meetings together is huge, because a lot of times, when you're there with a client and they're hearing something and you're like, sure, we can do that. But then, having the architect's, opinion is huge, as well as the contractor's opinion, because you're not sure exactly if you can do something, I think that's a huge part of what we do. I think as designers and builders is we really want to service the client. And so making sure that those, details are thought through, and literally we're bringing all of our expertise together. So understanding that, everybody has a part to play, and we're able to, kind of play off of everybody's strengths. But yeah, being able to designate a communicator, note taking, making sure that somebody's actually issuing, notes at the end of any meeting is very important. But yeah, that's kind of ways we like to follow.
I think it, comes down to communication, and communication ultimately also starts with the client and what they are expected to communicate and the best practices for managing expectations. So I'd love to turn the next question, which I'm very excited to hear about all of your perspectives on, over to Joseph, and say, when we're starting with the client, what is an incredible collaboration with an industry leader, or just something that you thought was so well done and so well executed that you'd love to share?
I'm sorry, about a project that we did with a client, or?
A client that had a project in mind and you saw that project executed and brought to life, and you think back and say, wow, that was so well done.
Yeah, it's such a great question. And such a long process in San Francisco with planning and building and design. We've been fortunate enough to attract design-oriented clientele, where they come to us. Generally, it starts with the location, and the size of the house is kind of where it starts with the residential real estate agent. Ideally, we love to have a design build team in place as we go out to look, but that's the exception to the rule, unfortunately, than the rule. And what we're able to do with our knowledge of the inventory is to very quickly identify opportunities that are either on the market or not on the market. And I think I had a client that came to us a couple years ago. She needed a penthouse on the north side of town because she wanted air conditioning, and she had to be close to the roof to get her air conditioning. That was literally the mandate. And it was very easy. There were 22 penthouses that suited her needs. And we contacted every single one of the owners or their representatives. And within a week, after she had been searching with another agent for over a year, we found one option. And then 2 months later, we found another option. And the seller was willing to sell. And she was working with David Aldroyd of Odata, who we love. And we were able to consummate that deal very quickly by proactively going out and finding a property that she was able to kind of clearly communicate to us what she needed. And the project was 24 months, and the result was absolutely one of the most stunning contemporary penthouses in all of San Francisco. She just completed it. And we've seen it, and it's unbelievable.
That's so exciting. And something you said, once again, echoing Reagan's point about communication being so important, you understood the client's needs so you could find something that filled them. But tell me more about why it's so important to have a design build team in place as you start to do that process.
Okay, 9 out of 9 buyers are out there in the market looking for their new home. We'll just narrow it down to single family homes. And they don't have a design build team in place. And they find the house that they want that needs everything, let's just say. And they quickly drag in a contractor, literally drag in a contractor who they've been recommended. And the husband just wants to know, what's the price per square foot going to cost me? And as Greg knows, that's an impossible question to answer because of the level of finish quality. I mean, there's so many variables. Reagan can speak to this too with, interior design. And they base their decision on such a opaque group of facts to make that decision to purchase the home or not. And if they have a design build team in place, one, trust has been established, which is huge. In a market like San Francisco, for the best properties that move very quickly, even in slow markets, the A properties move quickly, to be able to have a team that has established trust and can be mobilized to go into the home and kind of make some top line assessments that aren't based on, guesswork on what it may cost or may not cost to build it, leads to a level of confidence that the client can then go in and negotiate the best offer for themselves or compete against other parties and feel good about that often stressful part of life in purchasing a home in San Francisco, because they have professional support and guidance already in place prior to that happening.
I love that. And now we're starting to see a theme of communication, trust, confidence starting to build. And I'll turn the same question over to you, Greg. And if you think about a collaboration with a team that went exceptionally well, I'd love to hear about it. And I'm sure the audience would benefit as well.
I mean, we've done several projects recently that have been kind of exactly what Joe has mentioned, which is right from the purchasing, actually just after purchasing of the home, the clients engaged and had trust in a designer to build a team around kind of their needs. But those homes really do, and I couldn't have said it quicker than Joe said, is that it really did. It was fully based on trust and understanding of who they were hiring. And then kind of I don't want to say taking a step back as in not caring about the home, because I think along the way, there's so much care and so much insight that we need from a client. But really, quite honestly, allowing the team, my crew in the office always say this, but allowing the team to make the sausage, which is a terrible analogy, but there's a lot of back and forth between interior designers and architects and anyone else involved, that clients sometimes get caught up in the emotional side of, oh, there's a problem here, there's a problem there. But at the end of the day, those things all turn out well, as long as you trust that the team that you hired to build your home can collaborate together and get it done. And we've had several recently that have really turned out amazing because of that level of trust. Still, clients very involved in the process, but know that the decisions are going to be made in their favor all throughout the project.
I love that. And being pragmatic and solving problems. I think one thing that each of you has in common, although you do different things, is people come to you to solve problems. I need a new home. I need to construct something new. I need to build something new. I need to now make that place feel comfortable and cozy. So, moving it over to Stephen, what is a project that you've loved working on that you are excited about even now?
everybody keeps using the word trust here, and I kind of have to jump on that too. And I think it's the project where, you know, for all of us, it's like a client that has vision, who really trusts you and has a passion. Like those are the three things that the client brings that we all bring together, right? So thinking of a project, I mean, I finished a project last year, which, you know, I knew the client prior. They called me up to find this. They found a property off market that I actually had worked on 20 years prior. So they knew I had had an involvement with that property. So they naturally called me because they had knew me before, and they purchased the property. I gave them some suggestions. It was something they wanted to move forward with. They'd already had an interior designer that they'd worked with for other properties that they own, and they'd own in Atherton and in New Zealand. And I became instantly welcomed as part of that team. And it was just an amazing kind of collaboration of everybody in that project, because that project was really this major renovation we ended up doing and some addition. Just from soup to nuts was something that just was fully completed for them when they moved in. It was totally the architecture, the interior, the styling, the furniture, you know, every little item in that house was kind of pulled together for them and just so carefully considered and thought of. And there was just a lot of great communication back and forth with everybody just being sharing all those ideas. And it was just really a fun experience, because I'd never worked on a project that had gone so fully complete to take every little detail in the house down to like the salt shaker in the kitchen to be the delivery at the end of the job. It was pretty amazing.
That makes me so happy, because I love salt and my husband always makes fun of me, but I really was thoughtful about our salt shaker. I will say that. And Reagan, that, you know, brings me to, you know, the same question for you. When you're thinking about a project that you loved working on, I also understood that you worked on your own home, so it's probably hard to have a favorite child, but what is something that where collaboration and creativity and all of these things came together?
Yeah, there's a project that we just finished up and wrapped up last year here in San Francisco, and the house was just started out very similar to what you know, Greg and Jonathan were saying, basically how we walked the space with the client. They weren't sure if they were going to have purchase this house that actually was being developed from a developer and gutted, combined. And we were just brought on at the architect and interior designer, and not the contractor just yet, but we were brought on just to kind of see if the bones were actually good. And we were like, yeah, this is perfect. But there was like a spot in the area that basically when you went down this area was, they had started digging, but needed, basically the downstairs area just ended up being, feeling like dungeon-like. And so we were like, well, we want to capitalize on, like, everybody in San Francisco wants to actually capitalize on additional square footage for the return on their investment. And so we were like, how can we utilize this space besides like a wine cellar, because it didn't have a window and needed, you know, a sump pump to get all the water out. And so the husband actually really enjoys barbecuing and really wanted to get into like meat curing. And so we ended up doing this tasting room because they drink hard alcohol rather than wine, more so. And so we did this tasting room. This is crazy because the architect was, you know, speaking to Germany because this, you know, meat curing thing, you know, center that needed to be purchased was only available in Germany. This is all, of course, you know, happening during the pandemic. And so it was awesome because you just saw a collaboration of, you know, we needed to basically be able to tell the client how much cost this was going to be to, you know, dig extra, what this room and this usage could be. But then also, you know, the collaboration of the lighting, for example, the scenes and all of that needed to be appropriate for a tasting room. So, but yeah, in the end, they actually ended up making a tasting room, obviously, but it was fun to see the collaborative team all come together to basically, you know, see how we actually could, you know, bring something to life that a client actually had always dreamed of, but never thought that they could do. And I think that's what's so great about being able to collaborate with builders and architects, is just that team approach of being able to like all put our mindsets together and say, you know what, this is like the impossible, but we're going to do it. And coming up with these awesome solutions that actually it's an incredible room. So one day, maybe all of you guys can come look. It's an amazing room. So yeah, that's
yes,
right.
please. And you know, I one of our audience members just raised a great question, which I'm going to weave into the next thought that I'd love you to elaborate on. And what makes a great general contractor, an architect, an interior designer, and client? When you're thinking about your fellow collaborators, what makes them amazing to work with, and what builds trust and good communication? And I'll start with Greg on this one, since you're on the very technical, executing the dream side. How does that work for you?
I think it's just getting to know someone. I think that a lot of the times we rush into a process. We don't do enough of the interview process. We do what we call pre-construction on a lot of projects, which gives you a really good opportunity to get to know your GC prior to starting construction. I think that also helps you understand whether your GC is going to be a good collaborator with the rest of the team that you've selected. That's not always the case, but I think that it's a good way and an inexpensive way to really get an understanding of how all of your team is collaborating. I think that, recently, within the last year, we've had this opportunity to kind of slow down a little bit, slow down our process of trying to rush into, a multi-million-dollar, 2-year-long renovation, because the cities have kind of restricted us to do that. And so it's given us a lot of opportunities to work together as the team and say, like, hey, like, how much do you think this is going to cost? Do we want this tasting room? How much is that going to cost us? Do we have the time to do it? I think that we really have had the opportunity to work together and to really understand each other. That's not necessarily a way of like pinning one person against the other and saying, oh, this person doesn't work, but it's just a really good way to get into a nice rhythm. And it also gives you a great opportunity to make sure that once you get into construction, whether it's a new build or a remodel, that your contractor knows what they're building, as opposed to trying to figure out what costs are and competitively bid against other contractors. So I mean, there's a lot of other ways, but I think that that's been the most successful way that I've seen work, is that you interview up front, you get an understanding of what kind of contractor that you want, whether it be, what they call a guy in a truck, or someone that has a bit more sophistication, that's really interested in time and money, to be very blunt. And that can deliver on the product at the end.
That's great. And this all goes back to how important what Joseph shared early on was, which is having a design build team as early as possible will help guide everyone to make these decisions. And thinking to where we are now in the world with materials, appliances, everything seems to be on delay. So Joseph, I'll turn this to you next and say, what makes a great design build team for a client, and what builds trust?
What builds trust? Well, I like what Greg said, and we find this with our clients is, it takes some time to kind of have that aha moment with the client and you, where everybody kind of gets over that initial hump of you all get on the same side of the table. It's no longer about the money, it's about the vision and all of that. I think just spending time, and as Greg said, slowing down the process a little bit, respecting the process and what it is. And I think respecting the personalities, respecting the responsiveness and the back and forth between, so many personalities in these design build projects, some of us are more crazy than others, but there's a middle point there where, a constellation builds around it. And I think that finding that middle point, identifying it, searching for it, really starts the process in the right direction.
I love that point about there's always a little crazy in creativity. There has to be. That's what makes, vision into visionary. So, Reagan, I'll turn the same thought to you next and say, How do you allocate for that creativity when the interiors portion of a building or a home is usually addressed right at the end? How do you hone in, and what makes a great collaborator for your team and builds trust?
Yeah, I think starting, I think being kind of going back to communication, but also just being brought on to the team earlier on, I think allows that relationship to be built and the trust to be established. So like the ease of communication, but also I think one of the things, we actually build a lot of schedules internally just because that's kind of how we're driven. I think a lot of Stephen probably does that as well, but it just helps, us, drive a project along, but also kind of allows us to set expectations with our clients in terms of cadence. So I think somebody who I love working with and, on a construction portion is, putting and building those schedules, and we're understanding dependencies, for example, your tile, needs to be ordered by X date because, we're installing on this date. We do some purchasing. Sometimes we are trying not to do as much of that anymore. But, understanding those dependencies and those decisions, kind of a decision tree of like making sure our clients aren't feeling like they're having to be rushed to make a decision. And so it's kind of just, aligning those schedules together. So somebody who's really, organized and being able to, put together a schedule that allows us to understand kind of, at least I know it's a goal. It's not like specific in sand. I think everybody these days, especially now, hopefully understand that, flexibility on that schedule is necessary because things just, you can't expect that anymore, but never could. So just, understanding, that dynamic, and also just making sure that we're able to, have a schedule that we can adhere to and help out with everybody, sending presentations to the architect at, specific times so that we can actually have build a rapport and also have the time to give feedback, so that we are collaborating, making sure this is a unified approach rather than a singular approach.
And bringing it back to respecting the process is so integral, because even though you are all doing different, holding different roles within building the dream home, you're probably all doing them subsequently, often at the same time. So you have to make sure that that communication with your co-collaborators is there. And taking that question to you, Stephen, you may be working on drawings, even updating drawings while later in the process of when a dream home is being built, as much as you were early, probably less than you were earlier in the process. But what makes the best collaborator for you and your team as you're looking at the big picture?
Everything's basically the same thing, similar. I mean, communication, it's really just understanding where we're going, what we need to do, who's doing what. Sometimes, I mean, internally, we need to kind of be totally on pace with each other. We have a lot of projects going on at the same time. So it is an incredible balance when you have, project A that I'm working on with Greg and project B that I'm working on with Joseph. And there's all have different demands and schedules, and it's challenging these days. This is one of the busiest times all of us have probably had. So it's just being organized, as Reagan was alluding to, making good decisions, getting the right responsibilities and tasks in order. And I'm trying to, I lost train of thought here for a second, but my kids are downstairs running out the door. So you were asking about just the drawings between beginning and end, though, in terms of like, what was exactly you were trying to get to the point there?
So, as you're executing this design vision from the architectural side, what makes a really good collaborator or collaborative effort from the different partners on a project?
Again, it's a communication. If Greg needs something and he's his project manager, they're sending out an RFI to us or giving us time too. I mean, thinking in advance, it makes you a great collaborator. Someone who really is planning ahead. It's really challenging when we all of a sudden get the phone call on a Tuesday morning, they need an answer by lunchtime, right? So having somebody who's really organized, and we have regular meetings, for example, on whether it's a Zoom call or the contractor on-site meeting, and we just know what's coming. That really helps us a lot. So the collaboration in that part with somebody who's really organized, I think is huge for an architect. Also for the interior designer, we all have lots of things that are happening during the course of a project, whether we need to complete some drawings for reviewing cabinets or provide additional details. It's just pre-planning. It's really just staying in touch and being just good teammates. We really want to like working with each other. We want there to be, no stress. The more you get along, the more you communicate, I think.
Absolutely. And I think that you'll all enjoy the next discussion point that we'll go a little bit further on. And we're going to flip it and say, what makes a great client? Because ultimately it's the whole team. Everyone is sitting on the same side of the table trying to accomplish the same goal. So Stephen, I'll actually start with you just to mix things up a little bit. Tell me more about what does make an amazing client.
Well, I said it earlier a little bit. It's really the vision, the passion, the trust. I mean, that to me is awesome. We've had some great clients who are just so passionate about what they want to do, dreamed of doing their homes for many years. Recently, I'm working on a project. We actually just did a blog on a client that I just thought was amazing. They came to us with this vision of their program, and they came with, I'll call it a kind of a mini manuscript of just a roadmap of all the things they've dreamed of, ideas and sketches. This person actually put together a 3D model. She's a designer. She's an industrial designer, works at Google in the Nest division. And it was been so much fun working with her because she not only just had a passion for design, but she had a passion for communicating the design. We would do design iterations, and we would actually get back these amazing, Google Docs and 10, 15, 20 options of that elevation of the kitchen island or the kitchen wall with a yellow heart for the ones that she preferred the best. It was just super fun. And, so she took the lead on the design. We had different kind of conversations with her husband, and, but together it was just great because everybody, was participating and just made it fun was another part of the process that we just want to enjoy it. There's a lot of decisions to be made, during the course of a project, and just trying to make it a really great experience makes for the best client.
This is great. And it's also fun because building a dream home is a very fun exercise. It's a very fun outcome too. And taking that same question to Greg now, tell us more about how construction and the GC interacts with the client, and what are things that make a great client from your side?
Knowing what you want. Outside of trust, I think knowing what you want, I bet you, it helps in the sale of a home or the purchasing of a home. If a client, Joe touched on this earlier, like the client said, I absolutely need to have air conditioning in a high-rise building, like knowing what their needs are, and then trusting that we'll be able to perform and execute those needs. It's really, really hard as a GC to build a home when things are constantly in flux. When decisions are made and then changed, oftentimes that really paints a really terrible light on a GC in terms of cost increases and change orders, which no one likes to talk about. But oftentimes the best client is someone who trusts that they put their team together, but also that know what they want. It's so much better to have a very direct client that can give you the answers that you need in a timely manner and stick to those decisions. And this is a dream client because I don't know that we have many of them that come through the door and stay the course. And also, like, building your dream home comes with a lot of emotions. And so when you get into a space, no matter how many 3D drawings you've seen or renderings, I think once you get into the space and you start to feel it, I think oftentimes your emotions drive change. So trust and knowing what you want.
Also, this point that you raise about moving space from the virtual world to the physical world is such an important one. I think that sometimes we forget that we see mood boards, which become finished boards, which become construction, and then you actually walk into the space and experience it. And it always feels different, and it takes a little while to get used to it. So, bringing that same question to you, Reagan, what makes a dream client on your side?
Well, Stephen and Gregory, you guys for sure agree on all of those aspects: the trust, the knowing what you want, knowing what you don't want, and is just as important, I think. But also, yeah, working, I think, to Stephen's point, we worked with the same client that I was talking to you about earlier, she was a writer. She actually was in design. She loves fashion. And so really wanted her home to evoke her personality and her family's personality. And she wanted to be a part of the entire process. So she literally was at every site meeting and was joking around. It was just such a pleasure. And I think it ended right before the pandemic hit, and it was just kind of like an abrupt stop. And I was like, wow, I'm really sad because I feel like I was missing, that connection with everybody as the team. And I think that you're right. Like when you are connected with a client, you're open more to like call them up on the phone, even, as a team member, team player, but the clients who are really appreciating, I think, the details, really want to understand the functionality of the home and how that actually, affects their lifestyle, because I do believe truly that what we do is transforming for lifestyles and for lives. And, but also, life changing, but also, basically having a more personalized space is something I think as I begin, thinking about dream clients, it's those people who really want that personalization of a home to be life-changing, so that they can function doing what they want in love.
That's great. And the concept of personalization, everyone's perspective of what they think they want and what they want and how that actually ends up looking and feeling can always be a bit different. And I think this is a great segue to move that same question to Joe and say, when you're working with a client who's either buying or selling a home, what are the things that make for an amazing client experience from your side?
Well, we love our buyers and our sellers. For a buyer, having fun in the process. I mean, how much fun is it to go shop for your new home? I mean, it's more fun than even shopping for a sports car, I think, for most. On the seller's side, listen, we love sellers that want to partner with us and let us create a lifestyle around their house that we can present to the market. You have, the underlying asset that everybody's looking at price per square foot and what's this house worth. There's also value in creating a lifestyle emotional response around that house. So when the market comes through, when you see a Kane Lucier listing, it's this elevated experience that kind of is above the rest of the market. We just finished a house where we have very good relationships. We have a furniture dealer that we worked with who brought in all sorts of interesting vintage pieces. We have a fine rug dealer. Bergruin Gallery lent us 20 paintings, which was amazing. And when you walk into this house that's currently on the market, it feels like home. It doesn't just feel like a retail product that's moving through the market. And you can see the buyer's response and the homeowners when we walk them through. We don't let them come in the house for the last month, and then to walk them through and let them re-experience the home that they've owned for 20 years is a wonderful experience and very rewarding.
Joseph, I'll have to say, sorry, I'm going to say,
go ahead, please. Shopping
with a client for sure. Number one, dream client. I love shopping with clients.
No doubt.
That's the fun part.
Hey, Reagan, do you, I mean, I don't hear about a lot of decorators working with clients at auction. Do you ever purchase through auction with clients?
We don't, but we assist with their auction selections.
Wonderful.
I would love to help that.
Yep.
That would be part of the dream client
category. Do you know Right 20 out of Chicago?
Yeah, I do. Follow them.
Right.
Yep. Love them.
All right.
This is great. I was just messaging Simran to say that we have a few audience questions. So I'm going to turn the first one over to her to present to the group, and we'll share a few of those questions.
Yeah, so I have a question from Ray, and he asks, how do you think clients best plan and prepare for an extensive home renovation and construction? How should they prepare for it? Does that make sense? Hold on. Yeah,
I can jump in. I can jump in there quickly, Simran. I think just, figure out what it is you want. Reagan had said also what you don't want, but usually when you're thinking about what you want and why you're going to do an extensive remodel or repair or renovation, whatever it is, just be very concise about it. I mean, make a list, we actually ask people to do mood boards or start a Pinterest page because, a picture's worth 1,000 words. However you can describe your goals to any of us on the team here is always very valuable as a huge head start to get to know you.
Yeah, that's great. It's like, yeah, like put your thoughts down on paper and be clear about what it is that you want or what you don't want. Another question is, what is your favorite feature in a home that you've worked on? For example, with Reagan, the appliance garage you created for so many kitchens, an example of forming function. Is there anything else that you and the other panelists have created that you really liked the utility and creativity of?
Good question. Yeah, appliance garages are my favorite thing because you can hide everything away. Functionality. I mean, I mentioned the tasting bar. I think it's more of our tasting room. I think creating rooms that are both functionally and like maybe has dual functions. So you have this tasting room that functions as a meat curing, dry aging rack, but also is beautiful. And you can actually, drink as well. Maybe go outside of the box and put a roof deck on your house in San Francisco with a view, or maybe it's, a nice view. It's just creating the indoor-outdoor experience. And, put like a hot tub on the top, which we did for this project. An elevator, we've done an elevator that actually is a bar as well. So, and using that like on a bar cart, so you can actually move it, and actually it's functioning as an actual elevator, but also it's functioning as where you store your liquor. So we actually really enjoy making those types of fun and unexpected but functional uses in the space. I think that's really the fun part of our job.
And Greg, is there anything that you have to add for what of your favorite pieces are?
We're working on a project right now where we have a lot of hidden rooms, which I think is, comes in, goes in waves, but it's also quite fun, especially the family has a couple of young kids. And so the entire kid wing of the house is hidden. So you kind of can't get there unless you really know how to get there. So I think that's kind of anything that kind of like is outside of the norm is always kind of fun. Anything that gets your creativity going, anything that like is very technical on the construction side is always a lot of fun for our firm. We don't try to be designers or architects. We're definitely there to build, but we love the opportunity to kind of collaborate in how to get it to, its final resting place and actually functional. We finished like a, the bookcase with the hidden room behind it. We've done a couple of those, and those are a lot of fun because they all come with like their own technical challenges. So
I kind of want to hang out in that house. When is it going to be ready?
2023.
Oh, it's around the corner. Stephen, is there anything you want to add to that?
On the practical side of TVs, hiding your TVs. People love to watch TV, but they don't want to see their TV. So behind doors or certain motorized lifts you can actually get for the doors to slide up. So that's one. Done some other, I've done the big door too. Greg, we did that on a commercial project actually in the Presidio, which was really fun a few years back. Details of outlets that are, outlets that are in the floor. You need outlets in your living room if you have a great big open great room space. But we don't like seeing the physical outlet itself on the floor. So we've designed this, we've done a couple of jobs where just recessing the outlet into a box and then just having a removable piece of wood that fits exactly the proportion of the wood floorboard with just a notch for the wire to come out. So just little details like that are practical, simple, and just make everything so much more elegant.
Thank you for that. I like hearing about like how you want to like work the little pieces of magic over the projects they've done. Another great question just came through because my background is in merchandising and I know how delays happen. So how do you effectively manage client expectations, especially when it comes to delays and cost overruns?
I mean, I'm sure Greg and I are both dealing with that pretty heavily right now. We are. I'm working on a project right now where it's been so challenging. Appliance. I think Meg said earlier about appliances. There was a piece on Good Morning America today about appliances. It takes 4 to 5 months right now. It's just amazing how much work is going on. I think it's just communicating. I mean, we do the best we can. Just be honest. Be accountable. Whoever is responsible for either. It's not really necessarily any of our fault. So there's so many parties involved in manufacturing and overseas situations, and so clients do get frustrated. The best we can do is to try to just communicate and just help them through it.
I was just gonna say, we do as much forethought and pre-planning as heavenly possible throughout construction. And oftentimes we get challenged on why are we making this decision now? Why are we picking out shades for, the end of the project? Can't we make those decisions later? And I think that, again, it goes back to the trust, but just understanding that these questions come early and we want to make these decisions early because we don't want to find out that the range is 5 months delayed. And we don't want you to have to make another decision, but understand that your team is doing all they can to get the project done on time and on budget with your overall vision in mind. And so trust when you're being asked, can you make this decision on the faucet you want to choose when you haven't even broke ground because your timeline's tight? Know that it's your team that has your back and really just wants to be able to execute your vision at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think that's so important, like educating your client as like these some of the expectations. Like, so with CANOPY, we've done all of our build outs ourselves. Construction, there's always delays, right? But it's like, yeah, educating your client, like there will be delays, like, preparing for that, or like buffering in like some of that time, like, but yes, people get very upset and it's not fun to deal with.
We do a lot. Sometimes we'll do, just because it is nice to give little tidbits our clients. Sometimes because lately, the pandemic has caused so many delays. We're doing like mini installs, just to kind of give people, something tangible they can actually feel and see. And I think it does help. There's an inefficiency, a portion of that where they have to pay for an additional install. But I do think, just given the fact that, we 40 weeks for a rug, it's nobody's going to be waiting a year, almost a year for a rug. So yeah, it's just kind of, those are some things that we've done, but also just like you said, setting expectations and building buffers.
Yeah, somebody earlier had asked a question about how do I prepare for a remodel. I think, we always talk about contingency of budget. We have to start thinking about contingency of time too, because nobody ever does it shorter than expected. So that would be another recommendation. Always just give yourself more time. At least give yourself the buffer.
Yeah, start earlier than you actually think.
Well, I want to thank all you wonderful panelists for joining us today, and the audience members. It is 4 o'clock. We do have to wrap up now. If anyone has any additional questions, you can email Courtney at pembrokepr.com. I just saw that she posted her address in the chat box, and she'll be able to pass on the questions to the rest of the speakers. This has also been recorded. It's going to go on our YouTube channel. I have a feeling that we're going to be doing another talk. Greg is supposed to be doing one. I think I just told him earlier that he's doing another talk with us. So you'll find out what that's going to be. It's probably going to be the next 3 weeks or so. But thank you, everyone. And I hope that you will join our next one.
Great. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. Good to see everyone.
Bye.